cares for me?
I'm writing this script for this video on Christmas Day, 25th of December, 2021. Now, about 12 days ago, I traveled to the little town where I spent my teenage years. My original plan was to spend 2 weeks around my parents, siblings, uncles, aunties, childhood friends, and the other people I grew up with. Unfortunately, I had to run away from my hometown after 10 ugly days of staying around. And this video is about my personal experience concerning how everybody in the world suddenly appears to be your friend when you have some money, even though these people were never in your life all your life. About 35 years ago, I was born in this house. Needless to say, my parents were poor. To make my childhood even more difficult, I was born with sickle cell disease. Growing up in a Nigerian family, the only friend I had in the whole world was my mother. Yes, I have a father till this day, but he was never my friend because I was a sickly child. As a child, I had a sickle cell crisis about every month, and truth be told, it was hellfire. To make my situation even worse, my mother never took me to the hospital for diagnosis until I was around the age of 14. And just a few years after then, a medical practitioner announced to my family that I was likely to die soon. Now, imagine a 9-year-old boy who had a single friend in the world. Well, that was me. Whenever I went to school, my mates told me that I was ugly because my head was bigger than my body. And at home, my father left the room whenever I was sick. So the only person that told me I was smart, intelligent, and valuable was my mother. She would carry me on her lap, hold me very close to herself, and tell me that I was beautiful. Up till today, I can hear the voice of my mother talking to me when I was about 7. Steve, you're beautiful, intelligent, and the only problem we have is this your sickness, and I'll never give up until you're healthy. My mother told me, I'll never give up until you're healthy. She was my only friend. The first time my father started paying attention to me was when I started doing well in school. And then I was around 15. Coincidentally, that was the time the sickle cell crisis started reducing, and all to the glory of God. And by the time I was 17, my father had become a good father to me. My siblings, especially my elder brother, now cared about me, and most people in my family now appeared to be kind to me. This was probably because I was not having much sickle cell crisis and I was doing so well in school. I was the best student in many subjects. A kind of, this guy would probably not die and he may become something in the future. Well, but that honeymoon soon came to an end. It was a Thursday, the 24th of July, 2008. I left my parents' home after I announced to them that I had hated school and I would stop schooling and try to figure out how to build my own company. At first, a few people in my family thought I was joking. They thought after a few months of messing around, I would see how difficult the real world is and go back to school. And when they didn't see me turn back, they wrote me off again. My father made it clear that he didn't like to see me around him. I had no uncle, no auntie, no relative at this period in my life. My phone rarely rang, and nobody cared where I was or even whether I'm alive. In fact, my only brother disowned me. Let me tell you why. For most parents in Nigeria, school is God. And announcing to your family members that you are dropping out of school is synonymous with being a terrorist. In fact, my only brother equated me with the founder of Boko Haram, the most notorious terror group in Africa. In one of our conversations, he told me, yeah, you hate education just as Muhammad Yusuf hated education. That was probably why he disowned me, Anyway, for about 8 years, the 3 friends I had were my mother, one of my stepbrothers, and my fiancée, who is now my wife. But suddenly, life smiled at me. I figured out how to build my first company in the year 2016, and then my phone started to ring again. I have countless stories to tell you about my sudden popularity, especially among my relatives, but to have specifics, I'd like to tell you about what just happened in the last few days. I left Lagos on the 14th of December and drove about 6 hours to my hometown in Osun State, Nigeria. Unfortunately, as I got home, I discovered I had malaria, so I told my wife that I had to stay in our rented apartment. 2 days later, however, my parents got to know that I was around. I woke up early in the morning to see my 73-year-old mother, the woman I so much loved to see. But she was accompanied by my father and one of my uncles, the people I was probably not excited to see. Forgive me, Father, if you get to see this video. I just didn't like you that much. They all talked about how worried they were when they got to know that I was sick. I think my father talked about how he couldn't sleep well, and my uncle talked about how he wanted to come to me since last night he heard that I was sick. My dad and my uncle talked and talked and talked. It's all about how much they loved me, cared about my well-being, and would do anything to see me well. The only person who didn't say much was my mother. Her love is in her eyes, her smile, her touch, and her hug. Then my uncle got to know that my car wasn't starting. What an opportunity to show how much he loved me. He got himself dirty immediately, drove his car close to mine to use his battery for my car, and when that wasn't working, he drove to the next town to pick who he called the best required mechanic around, because according to him, my car is too sophisticated for the mechanics in our hometown. Maybe it's appropriate to let you know that the very uncle I'm talking about was a stranger to me all my life, until last year when I drove home in a nice car. We were never friends. We never sat down to talk. I can't even remember him doing me a single favor all my life, but suddenly he talked as if he would have a stroke if I died. Anyway, my uncle helped me fix my car, and yes, I gave him some money. And then my phone started ringing. That sister of yours wants you to come to a good hospital near her house. That aunt knows some magical herb, and she'll do anything to go get it for you. That brother is angry that you're around, had malaria and didn't tell him. Oh, one of my aunties said, I was surprised when they told me you're around. I know you always come to my house before you go to anyone else. The truth about what she said was that it was a lie. I never made her my priority or gone to her before anyone. She said that because that's what she wishes. My brother, the same man who disowned me about 7 years ago, drove a long distance to come to me to be sure I'm as well as I told him on the phone. He even brought me different kinds of food. One of my stepbrothers was about to come before I told him I was driving to him. Another uncle had gone to the bush, prepared me herbs, and gave it to my mom. Well, you get the picture. My family members cared for me when I had malaria, the same way America will care for Joe Biden if he gets COVID-19. At this point, someone watching this video might think, but why are you complaining that your family members care so much about you? Well, my answer to that question is, I know it's all fake. And that's a big problem about success. Success makes everyone love you, but deep within you, you know it's not real. For example, I have a cousin who used to live 30 kilometers away from me when I was broke. She never checked on me or even bothered to call me to know how I was doing. But when I started making some money and now lived 260 kilometers away from her, she called me and told me how much she misses my kids and wanted to come and visit. Interesting. If someone didn't have time to check you when you lived 30 kilometers away from them, why do they suddenly have the time now that you live 260 kilometers away? Well, that's the dark side of success. You have so many people all around you. You have so many people showing you love, but you really don't feel loved. If you are fortunate to have around you 2 or 3 people who show you love when you were broke and when you're a failure, then you have friends. If, however, you're unfortunate to have friends and people who care about you before you succeed, I'm sorry for you because you might live the rest of your life feeling lonely despite having hundreds of people around you. The simple reason why everybody avoids you when you're broke, sick, or failed is that, well, humans are selfish. All of us are selfish. So, the idea of human selfishness has been argued extensively by philosophers of all ages. In Plato's Republic, Socrates discussed with his older brother Glaucon, in which Glaucon insists that people's good behavior only exists for self-interest. People only do the right thing because they fear being punished if they get caught. They only pretend to love you because they'll get something in return, period. In the year 1631, the 17th century English philosopher Thomas Hobbes published his book titled Rejection, in which he claimed that man is not naturally good, but naturally a selfish hedonist. In Rejection, Hobbes wrote, and I quote, "Of the voluntary acts of every man, the object is some good to himself." According to Hobbes, as human motives were in their natural state guided by unenlightened self-interest, these could, if left unchecked, have highly destructive consequences. Left unrestrained, humans, propelled by their internal dynamics, would crash against each other. Hobbes tried to envision what society would be like in a state of nature before any civil state or rule of law, and he concluded that life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. A war of every man against every man. In 1776, Adam Smith published The Wealth of Nations, in which he wrote, "It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their interest. We address ourselves not to their humanity, but their self-love, and never talk to them of our necessities, but their advantages." In his 1936 book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie wrote, "The only way I can get you to do anything is by giving you what you want." Following up on this idea, Robert Greene wrote on page 95 of his book, 48 Laws of Power, "When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy." Most humans, unfortunately, aren't that merciful. In fact, Simon Newcomb seems to be suggesting that even our giving to beggars is as a result of our self-interest. In 1885, Newcomb said the willingness of citizens to give dimes to the homeless in terms of the demand for beggars is not different in principle from children giving pennies to organ grinders in exchange for their services. You get the point. Because people are selfish, if you are poor, you're a failure, or you're sick for a long time, you don't have any value to them, hence they avoid you. Philosophers such as Jean-Jacques Rousseau argued that people are born good, instinctively concerned with the welfare of others, and according to John Locke's philosophy of empiricism, human nature is a tabula rasa. Now, in this view, the mind is at birth a blank slate without rules. So data is added and rules for processing them are formed solely by our sensory experiences. If Rousseau, Locke's views were true, then human selfishness could both be the result of nature and nurture. This seems to be what science is saying, because according to this 2014 publication by Scientific American, genetic studies have made some progress towards identifying selfish genes in human DNA. By comparing identical twins who share nearly 100% of their genes and fraternal twins who share about half, researchers have found overwhelming evidence for genetic effects on behaviors such as sharing and empathy. In these twin studies, identical and fraternal twins are placed in hypothetical scenarios and asked, for example, to split a sum of money with a peer. It seems as the same way we have selfish genes, we also have selfless genes, which is why a few of us are truly selfless. In an ideal world, you would like everyone to love you for whom you are. You'd like people to truly love you when you're poor and when you're rich, when you're healthy and when you're sick, when you have something to give them and when you're broke. Unfortunately, in our world, friendship and love follow riches because most people are selfish. But there's good news, and that is there are a few people in the world who would love you for who you are, for good and for worse, whether you're sick or healthy, whether you're rich or poor. In my personal life, this is my mother, who loved me when I was sick and dying, my wife who married me when I was broke, my stepbrother who welcomed me to his home when everyone rejected me, and a few friends. If you are lucky to have a few such people in your life, don't ever take them for granted, because those few people are the ones who truly love you. Thanks for watching.